He finishes his dinner in under a minute, and 10 minutes later you clip on the leash for the evening walk, because that is simply the routine. Dinner then a walk, the same order every single day. Nothing about that moment looks dangerous. But somewhere inside that ordinary sequence, something is happening that most owners have never been told to watch for, and by the time it becomes visible, it is already an emergency. Who does this? Almost every owner, without exception, because nothing about walking a dog after dinner looks careless. It feels responsible, even loving, giving him a chance to move after eating instead of lying around. That is exactly why this particular habit slips past so many people, including owners who research everything else about their dog's care with real diligence. The mistake is not neglect. It is a gap in information nobody thought to fill. What is actually happening involves a condition veterinarians call gastric dilatation volvulus, more commonly known as bloat, where a full stomach, combined with movement and gas buildup, can twist on itself, cutting off blood flow in a matter of minutes. This risk rises specifically in the window right after a large meal, and it rises further in deep-chested breeds, though it is not exclusive to them. This is not a minor digestive complaint. It is one of the leading causes of emergency veterinary visits in dogs, and the difference between a close call and a tragedy often comes down to nothing more than timing. When does
Which
this
means the
danger
evening
window
walk so
actually
many owners
exist?
schedule immediately
Veterinary
after dinner
emergency data
falls
points to
precisely
roughly the
inside
2
that
to 3
window.
hours
Where does
following a
this
large
typically
meal
happen?
as the
Dogs.
period of highest risk, which means the evening walk so many owners schedule immediately after dinner falls precisely inside that window. Where does this typically happen? Almost always at home, in the most familiar, least suspicious part of the day, the exact routine that feels safest because it has been repeated 1,000 times without incident, right up until the one time it is not fine. Why does this keep happening across so many households? Because nobody built this information into the instructions new owners receive. Feeding guidelines mention quantity and schedule. They rarely mention timing relative to exercise, so the habit forms by convenience rather than caution. Dinner then movement, simply because that is when the leash is already by the door. How does an owner actually fix this? The adjustment is almost embarrassingly small once you know it. Shift the walk to before the meal, or leave a gap of at least an hour or two afterward, letting digestion begin before asking his body to move through space. That single change in timing, something most owners could make tonight without altering anything else about their routine, closes one of the more dangerous blind spots hiding inside ordinary dog ownership. But that is only the first everyday moment quietly working against your dog without announcement. And here is the surprising part, because the next one happens every single time you clip that leash on at all. What is the second hidden harm? It lives in the leash itself, specifically in how tightly you hold it. Trainers who study leash handling describe something called leash tension transfer, where tightness traveling down the leash from a tense hand communicates directly to a dog's body before a single word is spoken. Who experiences this most? Every dog walked on a short, tightly gripped leash by an owner who is anxious about traffic, other dogs, or an upcoming greeting, because the tension in your hand does not stay in your hand. It travels down the leash and registers in his neck and shoulders as pressure, the same physical signal a dog reads from another dog pulling him backward mid-greeting, a signal closer to restraint than reassurance. Where does this show up most clearly? In the exact moments owners tighten their grip instinctively, passing another dog on a narrow sidewalk, approaching a busy intersection, walking past something unpredictable. Why does this backfire the way it does? Because a dog reading tension through his own body, right as he is trying to read the situation in front of him, receives a confusing signal. The world looks normal, but his person suddenly feels alarmed, and dogs resolve that confusion by assuming the alarm is correct. You have probably felt your own dog grow more reactive, specifically in situations where you tightened up first, and wondered whether he was simply an anxious dog by nature. How does an owner fix this? By practicing what trainers call a loose leash default, keeping slack in the line even during mildly tense moments, breathing normally, and saving genuine tension for situations that actually require it, so the leash stops functioning as an accidental alarm system your dog has learned to trust more than his own instincts. Stay with this, because the third everyday habit hiding in plain sight involves something almost every dog does dozens of times a day without a second thought from anyone in the house. What is the third hidden harm? Repeated jumping on and off furniture, beds and car seats, an action so routine it rarely gets noticed as anything worth questioning. Who is most affected? Long-backed breeds and small dogs carry the highest risk, but the cumulative joint stress from years of repeated impact affects dogs of every size and shape over time. When does the damage accumulate? Not in any single jump, but across hundreds of small repetitive impacts. the same way a joint wears down gradually rather than all at once, invisible until a dog suddenly struggles to jump at all. Where does this happen? Everywhere a dog lives, the couch, the bed, the back seat of the car, all considered ordinary parts of daily life rather than physical events worth managing. Why has this gone unnoticed for so long? Because each individual jump looks completely harmless, and the consequences, when they eventually appear as stiffness, reluctance, or diagnosed joint disease, arrive so much later that nobody connects them back to years of small, repeated landings.
How does an owner reduce this risk? A simple ramp or set of steps beside furniture in the car seat gives a dog the same access without the repeated impact. A change so small it rarely occurs to anyone until a
Which means
veterinarian
the
mentions
evening
it,
walk so many
usually
owners
after the
schedule
damage has
immediately
already
after dinner
started.
falls
There
precisely
is
inside
one
that
more
window.
everyday habit
Where does
worth
this typically
understanding,
happen?
because
Dogs.
unlike the others, this one involves something most owners consider entirely pleasant. What is the fourth hidden harm? Strongly scented candles, diffusers, and air fresheners running throughout the home. Who does this affect most intensely? Every dog in the house, because a dog's sense of smell operates on a completely different scale than a human's, with scent receptors numbering in the hundreds of millions compared to a human's roughly 6 million, meaning a fragrance that feels pleasant and mild to you can register as overwhelming, even physically irritating, to him. Why do owners rarely consider this? Because the room smells wonderful from a human perspective, and there is no obvious reason to question something that seems purely positive. Where does this concentrate most heavily? Small, enclosed spaces, bedrooms, bathrooms, anywhere a diffuser runs continuously near a dog's usual resting spot, exactly the places dogs spend the most uninterrupted hours of their day. How does an owner adjust this? Choosing unscented or lightly scented alternatives, ensuring good ventilation, and keeping diffusers out of the specific rooms where a dog rests most. Small adjustments that cost nothing and protect a sense he relies on far more heavily than sight. There is one more everyday habit worth understanding, and this one happens outdoors. In a moment most owners walk straight past without a second thought. What is the fifth hidden harm? Walking a dog on hot pavement during the warmer parts of the day. Who notices this the least? Owners walking on 2 feet in shoes, completely insulated from a surface temperature that can climb far higher than the air temperature suggests, sometimes hot enough to cause real burns within minutes of contact. When does this risk peak? Midday and early afternoon, exactly the hours many people find convenient for a quick walk between errands or after finishing lunch. Where does the damage happen fastest? Dark asphalt and concrete in direct sun, surfaces that absorb and hold heat far longer than grass or shaded trails. Why does this go unnoticed so often? Because a dog rarely stops mid-walk to signal pain clearly, often pushing through discomfort out of eagerness to keep moving. So the damage to sensitive paw pads is frequently discovered only afterward, back home, as limping or raw, blistered skin. How does an owner avoid this entirely? A simple test before heading out. Pressing the back of your hand against the pavement for several seconds tells you almost everything you need to know. If it is too hot for your hand, it is too hot for his paws, and shifting the walk to early morning or evening solves the problem completely. Translate all 5 of these together, because the pattern connecting them matters more than any single item on its own. None of these habits come from carelessness. They come from living in a world designed around human senses and human schedules, where a walk after dinner looks responsible, a tight leash looks protective, a jump onto the couch looks like affection, a scented candle looks like nothing at all, and warm pavement underfoot barely registers through a pair of shoes. Every one of them was invisible precisely because it looked like love, or looked like nothing at all. That is the truth this video has been building toward from the very first second. The things secretly hurting your dog were never hiding in neglect. They were hiding inside routines that looked like care, repeated so often that nobody thought to question them, until the pattern itself became the danger. If any of these surprised you, tell me in the comments which one you are changing first, because I want to know how many of you are rethinking a routine you have followed for years without a second thought. If this gave you a new way of protecting your dog, subscribe, because there is a lot more of this kind of story still to come. And hit like so more owners who have never heard any of this can finally catch what their daily routine has been hiding.